What's going on here, Mace?
What's going on here? Yeah, I think. I think a lot of people, have been commenting over the course of this playoffs about Dale Weiss's play, how well he's played. Why are we seeing that player in Montreal and we didn't see the same player in Vancouver?
Well, I think we did, though, Mace. I think we did. Sorry to interrupt, but I think we did see it in spurts, and then he just wasn't given an opportunity. That's my opinion.
I agree. I think we did see him in spurts, and I think part of the problem was, that the one game that he didn't play, as well or to the same level as he did, say, the game before, then he was pushed back and he hardly got any ice time. And, he was treated. I think in retrospect, I think now, and there's a lot of people, coming to the same conclusion. He was treated with very little respect by the coach, and that's not a huge surprise given the history that he has with Tortorella in New York specifically. And I gather from what I'm hearing is that there was a movement afoot, very early in the season and to mid-season for sure, to move this guy. This was a push that Tortorella was responsible for. So he wanted Weiss out for whatever reason. There was just bad blood between the two of them, and I think from Dale Weiss's perspective, he was just as happy to leave as well, because he knew that. Well, he certainly is now, yeah. But I think he knew as long as he was there under Torts, he was not going to get a fair shot. This is not, altogether unusual in the game of hockey. For whatever reason, coaches, settle on a player and make them their whipping boy. And Mike Keenan, always had his favorites in terms of people that he would turn to punish and sit for whatever reason. Often it didn't make any sense. And so Dale Weiss was that player to Tortorella here in Vancouver. I was going to say that there is some stuff starting to bubble to the surface now about Tortorella's about Tortorella's stay here. This is not uncommon as well. I mean, you're already hearing out of Pittsburgh, rumors of a rift between Dan Bylsma and the players. Sidney Crosby has sort of come out today and denied that these rumors are true. He's saying they're not true, but I mean, there's obviously something there because some of the players have been talking to reporters. And
I can't see that given Bylsma's public persona. You know what I mean? The way he came across in 24/7, he seems such an even-keeled guy.
He's up against Boudreaux, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and of course you never know. You never know, how widespread it is. I mean, there may be a couple of reporters or a couple of players that have talked to reporters, and this has cast this in a bigger light and made it a bigger deal than it actually is. But I don't think there's no coach that is loved by all the players on his team. I mean, it's just not going to happen, and I don't think Dan Bylsma would have been immune to that as well. But back to Torts, back to our friend Tortorella. So here are some of the things that I've heard in the last couple of weeks from a whole bunch of different sources about some of the issues that sounded alarms about Tortorella. One was involving Alex Burrows. I gathered that Tortorella at some point in the season was trying to put pressure on Mike Gillis to have ownership buy out Burrows' contract. He was that set against him as a player, just did not see any future in this guy, and actually wanted ownership and management to consider buying out his contract.
Which may explain Burrows going over 85 games without a goal or whatever it was.
Well, I don't know Burrows.
Assuming he knew.
I don't even know if he was aware of it. But, I mean, I think that, if anything, it raised eyebrows because, I mean, Alex Burrows has been a consistent, player for this organization. I mean, it also kind of sent the message that the coach was, kind of absolving himself of any responsibility.
Well, you undermined the GM who paid Burrows the new contract.
Well, he just started a new contract.
That's right.
Exactly. So that was, I think, one of the very first signs that this was a coach who was not maybe on the same wavelength as the general manager, and even the ownership for that matter, because that certainly was never going to happen. Another thing I've learned is that the players were unhappy about the amount of practice that the team was, that Tortorella was conducting. I guess the feeling, to put it a different way, is that players didn't think that they practiced enough, and that Tortorella took practice seriously enough. And as well as anyone, that Tortorella has sort of different views about a whole bunch of things, about practicing the power play. Like, one of the things that really that he did that really struck people as odd was that he didn't look at videotape of the team that he was going to be facing. Now, there are coaches that just study videotape. I know there are assistant coaches, obviously, that have that sole responsibility, but usually the head coach wants to have that responsibility as well, and at least look at some tape. And I guess he wasn't really interested in that whatsoever. And that
didn't the Canucks know this when they hired him?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if any of these questions were asked. And to be honest with you, I think that there are people now. Donnie, asking that very same question.
Well, I don't think they're going to ask, "Are you going to practice?"
Well,
are you going to look at videotape?
But they'd ask people.
Background checks, you mean?
No, you ask people with the Rangers or the Lightning.
I think people would ask the question about practice. I mean, what is your philosophy about practice? What is your philosophy about improving the power play? I mean, there are coaches that we know that have coached in Vancouver that didn't believe in practicing the power play. Mike Keenan was one of them.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are philosophical questions that should have been asked about Tortorella. Another thing that has come out just recently is that his association with Travis Green, the coach in Utica.
Yeah.
So here is the coach of the Vancouver Canucks, and you have the coach of the farm team. You would think that the lines of communication between those two persons would be constant and always open, and that they would be communicating about who's playing well, who's doing what, or this is what we're doing up here. I mean, the farm team should be kind of a mirror image of whatever system that the big club is playing. John Tortorella did not have one single conversation with Travis Green all season. Not one.
That's impossible to believe, given how many players that they summoned or brought up and then sent back down.
My understanding is that there wasn't one conversation all season. And that, to me, just blew my mind. That because I know that, Alain Vigneault talked to the head coach of the farm team often. I mean, and so did Mark Crawford. It's just sort of a natural thing. You're going to at least have a weekly phone call.
Is there somebody down there that can help us right now?
Exactly. Who's playing well? And let's talk about these players. Just all sorts of things.
Should have called up Trent Green.
Maybe Tortorella would say, this is what he has assistant coaches for, but I don't think that that's a reasonable answer. I think the head coach has to have a conversation at least once a week with the head coach of the farm team to talk about things. So, and I think here's another thing that is, as I say, bubbled to the surface only recently.
David Booth story,
and there's a David Booth story too, where David Booth, there was a team meeting in the morning. David Booth showed up 5 minutes before the meeting was supposed to start. I guess maybe Tortorella didn't see him or whatever. The meeting starts, and then Tortorella lights into David Booth for being late for the meeting. And Booth says, wait a minute, I was here 5 minutes early. And I guess they got into a bit of a shouting match. And so the players were like, what the hell is going on here? Because they knew that Booth was there early. So, I mean, there was these things that were happening, on a whole bunch of different levels, just really odd, unusual things that, now have all coming to the surface that show that there were problems there between Tortorella and the way he coached, the arrangements he had with others around him, and the way he treated some of the players.
Well, Booth was in his crosshairs all year. I mean, he said he
no
was weird
about it.
earlier in the year, and you can debate that. And then he kind of qualified it by saying that's not a bad thing or whatever.
We need
it was.
a guy like that. Yeah.
But after he had a really good game, finally
in Detroit.
Yeah, I was in Detroit. He was back home, and he said, "If David Booth's your best player, then you got problems."
Yeah.
Well, if he's just had his best game and he hasn't had one for a while, pump him up.
Yeah.
I know they're grown men and they make big bucks, but I never.
The irony there is
that
that it came after the suspension, after Torts' suspension.
Yeah.
Well, didn't he have he had an odd.
That was the night he also said that they should. He basically sounded like a GM after that game too, with regards to what they should be doing with players. Go ahead, Mace. Sorry.
No, but I was going to say, when he was talking about David Booth early in the season, he described him as an odd duck or something.
Right. Yeah.
It was a very unflattering description of one of his players. But you're right. I mean, David Booth was another one of his whipping boys. Now,
he was Torts might have been an odd duck.
He was a lot of people's whipping boys, to be fair. But you're right. I mean, you're a coach should really be trying to, especially after a good game, pump a player up who hasn't been playing well. And to be fair to David Booth, I mean, he did have some serious injuries that probably stalled his progress. But anyway, I mean, I think that more than anything, I think the players kind of looked at that and the way he was treated and the way he was unfairly attacked in this instance and being accused of something that he didn't do. And those players have long memories, and those sorts of things can affect them. And
they're
can affect
in it together.
They're in it together, and that can that can affect the chemistry in a room in terms of the coaches' relationship. So, I mean, all these things are kind of piling up, and you wonder. You sort of do wonder how much homework was really put into, before they hired this guy, because this is the kind of behavior that I don't think, well, I don't know. I suppose some of these things you can't predict, but some of the things, you should have known. And
well, they should have contacted the contacts that they have with the Rangers or with Tampa Bay or whatever. I mean, did they? I don't know. Maybe they did. Somebody didn't tell the truth.
Exactly. Did he have the same relationship with the head coach of the farm team of the Rangers when he was there? I mean, a lot of people when they heard about the Travis Green thing were like shocked by that. They just found it really hard to believe that could have happened.
Well,
that you can go an entire season without talking to the head coach of your farm team.
It's great stuff, Mace. It seemed like an odd hire at the time, and it's proving to be just that. We appreciate your time today.
Well,
Mace.
was an even odder hire was that they hired former Rams quarterback Trent Green to be the assistant coach at Utica.
That was my little offer.
I never make a mistake.
Should have called up Trent Green. Don's looking at me, Travis. Oh yeah.
I never make a mistake.
Former BC Lions property, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Mace.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
I
owe you one.
You
can rip me.
Have to do that. That's got to be done. that was my big contribution there.
Yeah.
Trent, you should have called up Trent Green.
you know what I love is that you thought it was a real good line. You thought it was funny, and it was, except you got the name wrong, and it was from a different sport.
So it doesn't work. Recharge with Formula 4 oxygenated water. Drinking a bottle is like getting an extra 140 breaths of air. Visit formula-4.com. Gary Mason, presented by Formula 4 oxygenated
That's good
water.
stuff.
It is good stuff.
Let's go through it here.
Water it's the water.
No, well, let's do that too.
We've had that too.
Mace is well connected. Talking about Torts wanting to buy out Burrows. He finally started gets paid. You should have bought him out. If you wanted to buy him out, I mean, the Canucks sometimes, Torts wasn't here yet. When he was making $2 million, it was a bargain deal. He just started a $4.5 million a year contract.
Mike, I know you just signed this deal, but buy him out. Continue.
Although that became a trend later in the season, buying people out with a lot of time left on their contracts, including Torts. Never talked to Travis Green, head coach in Utica. And I've never heard that before, where a head coach of an NHL team won't communicate with the head coach of the number one farm club.
We'll ask Ray about coming up next about Jeff Blashill in Detroit and what sort of correspondence he has with Babcock.
There you go. No, and we heard this one early on. This is no surprise. The players complaining about a lack of practice. Yeah. And which it seems odd, doesn't it? Because you think, wait, I got a day off. That's great.
He said he was going to look at the schedule and he's going to find days that they could take off.
Mm-hmm. Well, you think about that. I mean, okay, the Sedin's fine, Kessler fine. You got guys who are getting, like Dale Weeks, getting 3-4 minutes a game and they're not practicing as well. Is that good for an NHL team?
Yeah.
Please. And then the situation with David Booth, which was awry from the beginning of the season until near the end when Booth started. I thought he's one of their best players by the end of the year. But interesting stuff from Mace as always.
A little bit from Sydney next on the Team 1040.